Bishop Dale C. Bronner,
giving you some principles by which we grow. I've already shared the first two. Just by way of remembrance, number one was simply to embrace change. To embrace change. If you really want to cultivate growth, embrace change. Embrace change. Because change is the only constant in life. You constantly change the changeable and steadfastly cling to the unchangeable. But you embrace change. Be open to it. Embrace change. Don't fight it. It's coming anyway. Whether you fight it or not, it is coming. So just embrace it. Number two, hone your skills and add to your knowledge base. Hone your skills and add to your knowledge base. Hone your skills and add to your knowledge base. You practice, study, read, add to your knowledge base. Add to your knowledge base. Embrace change. Just go ahead and embrace it, because there's no need in fighting it. Just embrace it. Embrace it and hone your skills and add to your knowledge base. It's a sure way to cultivate growth. A sure way to cultivate growth. Let me give you number three. Number three is to ask questions. Ask questions. Voltaire said, judge a person by their questions rather than their answers. Your willingness to ask questions, coupled with your discipline to seek out answers, will undoubtedly cultivate growth. It'll cultivate growth in you. Your willingness to simply ask questions. Simply ask questions. And then once you have asked questions and then discipline yourself to seek out the answers, then you convert that knowledge into action. You want to convert knowledge into action. Because after you know this stuff, the whole idea is, so what? What difference does it make if in the actions of your life or the actions of the lives of others, nothing changes? You convert your knowledge into action. Now, quality questions create a quality life. Quality questions create a quality life, because you only get the answers to the questions that you ask. You only get the answers to the questions that you ask. My dad taught me that you can measure a man's intelligence by the quality of questions that he asks. So, focused questions stimulate creative thinking. Focused questions stimulate creative thinking. I mean, a well-considered question penetrates to the heart of the matter and triggers new ideas and new insight. And so never ever be afraid to simply ask questions. We learn truth by questioning the nature of reality. Let me say that again. We learn truth by questioning the nature of reality. He who asks a question may be a fool for a moment, but he who never asks a question is a fool for life. So don't ever be afraid to ask questions. Before you give an answer, don't let people pressure you into stuff. Financial decisions, if it's something that's got to be made right now, you're about to make a mistake. You better take time to listen, to read the fine print, to ask some questions, and to get an understanding, and then give them your answer. Then give them your answer. You don't want to judge a matter before you have heard it. And you ask questions to make sure that you have clarity in your understanding. And remember when God asked Adam a question? He said, "Where art thou?" Genesis chapter 3, verse 9. Now, you know that God is omniscient. That means he knows everything. Now, when he asked them, was he really asking for information to saying, like, Adam, where are you? God knew exactly where Adam was. What was God's point here? His point was to awaken a consciousness in Adam as to where Adam himself was. So instead of God just speaking to Adam and telling him, Adam, you know what? You are a lost, mixed up, twisted soul. I met a young man, and he said to me, I have turned my life around. I used to be angry and confused, and now I'm confused and angry. But what you want to do in your life, you really honestly want the grace of God in your life, coming into your life, where He's helping you. And when He asks you a question, as God posed that question to Adam, it was to bring a realization in Adam that, Adam, you are out of place. You are not where you belong. Man of God, you are not in your rightful place. You are out of position. And it was God bringing an awakening. And when He could see it, when He asked the question, Adam, where art thou? It started him to thinking about where he was, but more specifically where he was not. I used to love it years ago. They used to have it come on the television. It said, it's 9 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? Shoot, they hadn't even left home yet by 9. But asking the question sets the parameters here for you to be able to really elicit an awakening in your consciousness, a realization on the inside. And so may I just remind you of this, is that the most important questions that can ever be asked are the questions that you pose to yourself. The most important questions are the ones that you pose to yourself. See, there's a great value in simply just learning to ask the right kinds of questions, because great questions can produce responses that honestly help us to grow. When He asked Adam, where art thou? You know, it began to help him to have a realization of where he was. He realized then that he was lost. Learn to ask questions of yourself. Learn to ask questions of yourself. What am I doing? Why am I here? When am I going to change? When am I going to learn? Why am I so stupid? Learn to ask questions of yourself. What adjustments do I need to make? What are my goals? Who are my mentors? Who do I, listen, this is a very key question. Who do I spend the majority of my time with? Because whoever you're spending the majority of your time is shaping your thinking. You need to ask yourself questions like, what am I doing to become better? What am I doing to become better? You need to ask yourself a question like this: am I pleasing God? You know, when I get home, I don't ask myself questions, Bishop, did you make them shout tonight? Bishop, did we have church tonight? At the end of the day, I want to ask our sweet and wonderful Jesus, Jesus, were you pleased? Lord, were you glorified in what was done? Did you receive glory? Were you edified, magnified in the presence? Not did we have church. No. This is the house of the Lord. This is the Lord's house. This is not a parade of flesh. We're here to worship God in spirit and in truth, to be able to mature His body in the earth. And so it's not about what we did. It's not about the calisthenics of the church. It's really about, I want to ask the right questions so that it keeps my own personal motives pure. I want to ask those kinds of questions. Learn to ask the right kinds of questions. And then you need to learn to ask questions of wise people and also ask questions of high achievers. You know what you know, you don't know what they know. Proverbs 13:22 says, he that walketh with wise men shall be wise, but a companion of fools shall be destroyed. Now, when you're with a fool, you're going to have a great time. I'll be the first to admit it. You will have a great time with a fool. But it will destroy your life in the long run. You're going to be broke, busted, and disgusted. So you learn to ask questions of wise people and of high achievers. Ask them, can I give you some sample questions? Would you like to know? Ask them a question like this: what quality or character trait do you think is most responsible for your success? Ask them something like this: what quality do you think is most responsible for the success of those who have earned your respect? You know, like your mentors. What quality do you think actually helped them to become who they are? Ask a question like this: who have your mentors and role models been up to this point? Ask them that question. Who have their mentors and role models been up to this point? Ask them the question like this: what are some key things that they have taught you or allowed you to discover about yourself? Ask something like, how have you dealt with failure or setback in your own life? Ask them, you know, if you could do things all over again, what would you do differently? And then ask people, what advice would you have for someone in my position? And as the responses to these questions begin to flow, you need to have some kind of way to record those responses. Record the responses. May I tell you this? If you forget an answer, you are no better than the person who never knew it. He who does not read is no better than he who cannot read. So as the responses to questions begin to flow, have some way to record the essence of their response. Write it down. A short pencil is worth more than a long memory. If you think it, ink it. Write it down. Somehow it needs to be recorded so that it can be rehearsed. Truth that is not rehearsed is soon forgotten. Truth that is not rehearsed is soon forgotten. And you demonstrate, actually, when you record something, that you are a good listener. And what you want to do, if you're going to spend time with somebody and ask them some questions, make sure that you minimize the distractions. Wherever you go, turn your cell phone off. Get out of a flow of where things could just easily interrupt a person. But asking questions will honestly help you to grow. The founder of Forbes magazine, B.C. Forbes, he said it may be all right to be content with what you have, but he says never with who you are. In other words, you ought to keep growing. You ought to keep on growing in your life. You should press to continue to grow, to continue to grow. Look over in Ecclesiastes chapter 7. Ecclesiastes chapter 7, Old Testament. Ecclesiastes. Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes. Chapter 7. Ecclesiastes chapter 7. Now notice in Ecclesiastes chapter 7 and verse 23, it says, all this I have proved by wisdom. I said, I will be wise, but it was far from me. As for that which is far off and exceedingly deep, who can find it out? He says, I wanted to be wise, but it was beyond me. What was I going to do? But notice verse 25. I applied my heart to know, to search and seek out wisdom and the reason of things, to know the wickedness of folly, even of foolishness and madness. But I applied my heart to know. I want to apply my heart to know, to search and to seek out wisdom and the reason of things. You have to dig for real truth. You have to dig for it. It's never just on the ground. You have to search for it as though it is a hidden treasure. Look for it like you're looking for money that's lost, but you know it exists. Marcel Proust asserted that we don't receive wisdom, we must discover it for ourselves after a journey that no one can take for us or spare us. And so you have to ask questions. Never be afraid to ask questions. Asking the right kinds of questions will bring you to another level of maturity and growth. And you can cultivate growth by simply learning to ask questions. Here's growth strategy number 4. Turn over to Exodus chapter 18. Exodus chapter 18. But here's growth strategy number 4. If you really want to grow, seek out constructive criticism. Now, I know that's not easy and it's not comfortable, but seek out constructive criticism. Here in the 18th chapter of Exodus, Moses' father-in-law, Jethro, had to give him some criticism. And let me tell you, the real reason that I believe that he gave him this criticism is because Moses, he was so busy trying to do the work of God, you know, he actually had to send his wife Zipporah back home with their children. And Jethro, the father-in-law, he's like, wait a minute, Moses. Now you got to take care of your wife and your children, Moses, Mr. Man of God. Because he said to Moses, Moses, the thing that you are doing is not good. Now, let me just say this, that Moses did not go to his father-in-law and ask for this wisdom. His father-in-law volunteered it. Now, this can be dangerous because unsolicited advice is often interpreted as criticism. But now here is what made a difference with Jethro, his father-in-law, is that he had relational equity. Have you ever known the truth about a person? I mean, you all think with me for just a moment. Have you ever known the truth about a person and you really wanted to tell them, but you knew that you didn't really know them like that? You didn't have the kind of relationship where they would receive it coming from you because you don't have the relational equity, but you know what's wrong with them and you know how to really correct their problem, and you wish you could just walk up to them and say, listen here, let me tell you what your problem is. You wish you had that relationship where you could honestly be the one to do that, but you have to have relational equity. You know, I was in a meeting of pastors, and somebody looked over at me. They said, Bishop Browner, you know so-and-so. Why didn't you correct him? You saw that he was off track. And I told him, I said, wait just a moment here. I said, I don't have relational equity. Yeah, I know him, but I don't know him like that. You know, I said, I don't have relational equity. You see, unrecognized authority is no authority at all. So you have to have relational equity. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, had relational equity so he could talk to him. Here's another thing that qualified him to talk to his son-in-law, is because Moses is a man of God, servant of God for the people, the children of Israel. But Jethro also himself was a priest. He understood ministry and people. He was the priest of Midian. So you're talking from priest to a priest. And here this man that has wisdom, he says, listen, what you're doing now, you're young and strong now, but you're going to wear out real quick. If you keep doing that, you got all these trivial matters coming up to you. You don't need to be dealing with that, Moses. You know, you got a wife and children. You're going to kill yourself, and you're not going to be able to take care of your family. And he says, you need some help. You need someone to help you. You're one person, and you're trying to rule a nation here of about 1 million people. You are going to kill yourself. And he says, listen, you'll notice the story, verses, I won't read it for the sake of time, but verses 13 down through verse 24 records that particular story where he was giving him the wisdom of selecting individuals who could actually help him with that. And he told them, he gave them the criteria of the kinds of men that he needed. In verse 21, he says, moreover, you shall select from all the people able men. Don't get anybody who doesn't have competence. The most irritating thing that you could ever have is incompetent people around you. Incompetence, listen to this carefully, incompetence is always a distraction. Incompetence is always a distraction. He says the first thing, get able men. Get able men. such as fear God. Get people who have a fear of God. There are some men who are able, but they have no fear of God in them. Get able men and get men who fear God. And notice, men of truth. Men of truth. If they're not men of truth, they're not going to last. It's just going to be a matter of time before their life collapses. Men of truth, and notice, hating covetousness. So they can't accept bribes, so that they'll be fair and equitable with the people. Hating covetousness, and place such over them to be rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of fifties, and rulers of 10. And he said, let them judge the people at all times. And then it will be that every great matter that they shall bring to you, but every small matter they themselves shall judge, so that it will be easier for you, for they will bear the burden with you. And so he gave him some very good constructive criticism, because Moses was limited as one man. He would have been burnt out, and he would have totally have failed his family had he tried to do it the way that he was currently doing it. He had to get constructive criticism. He got constructive criticism. You know, Benjamin Franklin is remembered today as one of the country's most beloved founding fathers. And he secured a place in history as a wonderful American treasure, a writer, an inventor, a politician, and an unparalleled thinker. But did you know that Benjamin Franklin was not always as popular as he became? In fact, in his autobiography, he portrays himself as a younger man as a blundering, uncouth, and unattractive person. But what happened? One day a friend pulled Benjamin Franklin aside to give him a bit of constructive criticism. And he pointed out to Ben Franklin that he was losing friends because he had a tendency to be rude, tactless, and overbearing in conversation, insisting on his own opinion that it was correct without listening to other people's point of view. And many people would have responded with rationalizations and with anger and with denial and with retaliation and said, you know what, you ain't perfect either. But Benjamin Franklin interpreted the painful criticism as a wake-up call. And he used it to transform his daily actions and dealings with other people. And soon Benjamin Franklin was an international traveler with the influence and the ability to change the course of history. Let me tell you that listening to honest feedback can cause some discomfort, but in the long run, it can help you to become a better person. If you really want to grow, you're going to have to ask somebody that you can trust and who has the ability to be able to properly evaluate you, to see what you have, because they can oftentimes take inventory of you better than what you can take it of yourself. They can see qualities because you can only see certain things. There's a backside, there's a blind spot in everybody's mirror where you really can't see yourself. And somebody that you can trust has to be able to speak to you and help you to identify those areas of weakness. So identify some wise and trustworthy persons, and then give them permission to speak in your life for the sake of growth. And ask questions like, what one thing would you recommend for me to be more productive or effective as a person? Or what should I stop doing? What should I start doing? What should I continue doing? And what should I improve in doing? Aristophanes said that the wise learn many things from their foes. And I say that because sometimes your enemies, people that hate your guts, will criticize you. But I have learned that even when people don't like me and criticize me, I will ask myself, is there a shred of truth in what they said? I get over the offense and I just want to examine myself to say, you know, is there a shred of truth? Maybe there is a point to what they were saying about me. Maybe beyond their anger and the nastiness and maybe their profanity. Maybe there could be something about what they said that is true, and I don't perceive myself like that, but they were coming at me, and maybe it's not. Ladies, maybe that other woman is not telling you that because she's jealous of you. Ask yourself, is there a shred of truth in what is being communicated here. Because sometimes your constructive criticism can actually come from a foe, an enemy. But I do say this, that if your enemy is the first person to tell you what's wrong with you, you don't have any friends. A best friend is a friend who brings out the best in you. They can tell you openly and honest about you. They are not infatuated with who you are. They have the ability to be able to just speak into your life and tell you the truth about yourself, not to hurt you, not to impugn you, but simply to help you, to cause you to become ameliorated as a result of just speaking the truth in love. And there is a way, I think, that we are called as Christians to speak the truth in love. If you are always just trying to speak things nice and flowery, you don't help a person by saying, listen, it's okay if you want to continue speeding down this road, but if you know the bridge is out, you need to stop and say, listen, slow that thing down or you're going to kill your fool self. And you need to sometimes look people, you have to shake them to be able to get them to see that, listen, I'm not trying to hurt you, I'm trying to help you. Don't be so sensitive. Don't be so narcissistic and think that the whole world is against you. But realize that there is a shred of truth perhaps in the criticism. And when there's a constructive criticism that comes from people who love you and who believe in you, and they can speak positive things concerning you, but also tell you, not only praise you for your areas of strength, but also point out to you your areas of weakness where you need to improve if you really honestly want to be better. If you really want to grow, one way to cultivate growth, in addition to asking questions, is simply also seeking out constructive criticism, saying, show me how I can be better. What is it that I'm doing now that I can improve on? How are my people skills? Not just how well do I do my job, how well do I relate to other people? Because sometimes your attitude is more important than your competence.
Thank you for watching Power for Living with Bishop Dale C. Bronner. Until next time, God bless you.